All right, class, welcome. It's September 19th. It's a beautiful Monday morning, and fall is near. You can feel it in the air. It's nice and cool here in Aberdeen. Um, we had a lot of rain also last night, so it's kind of wet and cool. But it'll warm up still and be nice and warm for a few more weeks until winter hits us like a hammer. Okay, that was negative. Anyway, welcome to class. This week we move into a new unit, asynchronous digital communication. And the idea with asynchronous communication is that we communicate asynchronously. This is something that people watch on their own time or do on their own time. That's asynchronous distance learning. It's do it on your own time, although there are deadlines again, remember, for asynchronous distance learning. And really the focus though of this unit is moving toward this whole concept of creating your own flipped classroom. So there's a project preview that you'll learn about this flipped classroom, but I wanted to talk about the concept of a flipped classroom really quick first. So if you look at this, this is a normal class as we normally do it. And this is the flipped classroom idea is more of a high school idea, not so much of an elementary idea, although it can be done in elementary. But the idea here is that in your regular classroom, you normally would do these activities. You might do some time of instructor presentation, and then included in that is maybe some time for students to question or to ask questions and for you to answer some of those questions. So a student Q&A. So that's the basic general unflipped classroom. And then outside of class, in the unflipped classroom, you might have student practice, and that might be in the form of a bunch of assignments that they might do, math questions, math problems that students must complete based on what you presented to them in class, and also group work. These kinds of things will often happen outside of class. So of course the flipped classroom means that we flip these two things around real quick. So let's move in class over here and outside of class over here. And so now what happens is that the instructor presentations are recorded for student watching online or outside of class. And so the instructor presentation there is recorded and students watch that outside of class. Student Q&A, let me move away for a minute. We'll put it somewhere in a minute. So that's what happens outside of class. Is in preparation for today's class, students will watch the instructor presentation that has been recorded online. And then when they get to class, that's when they do the student practice and group work. They might complete a bunch of problems. So how it looks in class really is that the students do what you might have thought of before as homework. They do the math problems. They do the practice work that you wanted them to do independently. But they do that in class instead. And if there are group work or project-based learning, they might do that in class as well. And the reason why you want to have them do it in class in the flipped model, this is the flipped classroom, is because maybe they need the supervision, maybe they need the help from you, maybe they can work on it collaboratively a little bit, maybe they can get help from their peers in the classroom. And then that's what happens inside of class. Now a couple more things. The instructor presentation that happens outside of class is usually much shorter than the instructor presentation that might happen inside of class. Because of this element, the student Q&A is not there anymore. You might add this to in class as well in the flipped classroom model. So all you have to do is present the information. There's not all the discussion that goes on. There's not all the extra time for things. You just create a good presentation that has quality recording and quality voice and so forth for outside of class consumption by students. And then in class, that's when students can come, and maybe that's what they do first. Maybe they ask you a few questions that they might have had about the presentation that they watched, or about things that were unclear. So that's really the concept of the flipped classroom, is that you flip what you normally would do outside of class to inside of class, and what you normally would do inside of class to outside of class. And it's a fairly common concept, although there is a caution to be raised here too. Preliminary research studies show that this can be a quality learning activity. It can enhance students' learning if you flip the classroom, if you do it well. But that's just preliminary research, and it's kind of faddish still, so you have to be kind of careful about that. But it is a good thing to be aware of and be able to do, obviously, because you have more tools in your toolbox that way, and you can run your class in many different ways if you flip your class. So that's the concept of the flipped classroom. You're going to preview the project that we'll be doing in a few weeks. And it's called the assignment on the flipped classroom. And so you'll take a look at that assignment. What it is basically is that you have 2 lessons that you're going to create, and these are the outside of class instructor presentations of 10 to 20 minutes in length. Now remember, these are just shorter. You can't record long 50-minute lectures for students to actually watch online. They have to be shorter. You can't just expect it to be the same as you might present in your class. Because again, you need to make it concise, you need to make it to the point, and there is not that student question and answer opportunity, so that won't take up any time there too. So most of the time, flipped lessons are much shorter than their actual presentation in class. But they need to have good voice and audio quality, and you're going to be learning about some tools just this week, in fact, about how you might record a lesson and provide that to students. And also you're going to create then 2 lesson plans for this element, this in-class element of the experience, the flipped class experience as well. So talk about what types of things students might do in class after having watched the outside of class instructor presentations that you have recorded for them. So yes, you do have to record 2 lessons, and yes, you do have to plan 2 lesson plans, but no, you do not have to actually implement these in your classroom. Like let's say you're a teacher, you don't have to necessarily implement these in your class. You can just record them and then make plans for what you would do in a class like that and how you would flip it. And as I mentioned, it is a high school type concept. For those of you who are not in high school, not teaching a high school level, I would be interested to see what you come up with how it might work for your students. What could they watch? And what could you create that would engage them? And then also, what would you do in class after having watched that? It might not be so cut and dry as this model that I've shown, but I think that you can come up with ways to make this work for even an elementary school level, a 2nd grade level, and probably higher. So that's something to be aware of as well. And then you'll be watching these asynchronous communication tools. This teaches you a little bit about how to record. You could do a PowerPoint presentation for a flipped lesson. You could make an EduCreations presentation or a recording with Screencast-O-Matic like I'm doing right now. Those are some options for making this flipped lessons, and it will teach you about those. And then you're also going to post just the general topic of what you might want to do for your flipped lessons. So post about that, and of course respond to at least 2 other students' posts. And just tell me what you think you might do for your flipped lessons so far. Now remember that the assignment actually is due on this week, October 3rd through the 8th. So October 8th is when the actual flipped classroom assignment is due. And there it is right there to submit it. All right, well, I wish you well this week. Have a good week talking and starting our discussion about flipping your class.